I'd kill you if I can get away with it. Listen, Dana, you need to take that post down. It's ruining my reputation.
You don't want to become scrutinized. Maybe you shouldn't, be naked for a living.
Oh my God, you do have my shorts. What are you doing with them?
I decided to take your advice from the other day, and I'm making my profile on WLW.com.
Oh, let me see. It's a good picture, but it doesn't really show off your assets, if you know what I mean.
You have been the face of this company for the past few years.
Yeah. I am provocative lingerie.
It's you against Sandy. How do you feel about that?
I'm excited. I don't know why they wouldn't want fresh face in any way.
They have to actually pretend that other girls have a chance.
I'm sure that they're looking for a younger look, as I would say.
Scene. 3 of the film shifts its narrative focus to Siri, a young woman navigating the intersections of privilege, personal aspiration, and relational complexity, and Tara, whose intensity, enigmatic presence, and self-assuredness bring both challenge and intrigue into Siri's world. And through their interactions, the film delves into how young women, particularly those exploring queer identities, negotiate power, desire, and self-recognition in relationships that are socially surveilled and emotionally fraught. And from the outset, Siri's narrative situates her within the broader context of adolescent and early adult transitions, her acceptance into college, her family restructuring, and her social positioning, highlighting the pressures young women face to perform competence, maintain social legibility, and uphold appearances of stability even as they navigate profound internal questions about identity, desire, and relational connection. And Tara's arrival into this space disrupts that. Equilibrium, introducing tension, rivalry, and the subtle stirrings of emotional and relational curiosity, which the film portrays not as sensational or provocative, but as a careful excavation of mutual recognition, latent longing, and the emotional labor required to navigate intimacy in contexts that are structured around surveillance, social expectation, and implicit hierarchies. And the interplay between Siri and Tara operates as both a literal and symbolic representation of the ways queer women negotiate attraction, admiration, and relational tension within a world that often expects them to downplay, rationalize, or disguise feelings that do not conform to heteronormative frameworks. And the narrative emphasizes emotional negotiation, hesitation, and boundary setting, illustrating how queer desire frequently unfolds through careful calibration of behavior, attention, and responsiveness to another. And these dynamics are deeply recognizable to lesbian audiences who have experienced the interplay of longing, curiosity, and ethical self-restraint when forming connections with other women in public, professional, or socially constrained contexts. And as the 2 characters engage in moments of confrontation, teasing, and measured vulnerability, the film foregrounds the ways in which emotional intimacy emerges not through overt action or spectacle, but through attentiveness, responsive communication, and the acknowledgement of shared emotional stakes, emphasizing that desire and connection are deeply intertwined with ethical awareness, relational safety, and self-reflection. And the film's careful attention to dialogue, glances, and subtle negotiation allows viewers to witness the formation of relational awareness, the recognition of the other's presence and intact, and the quiet acknowledgement of feelings that are socially complicated yet personally meaningful. And the oscillation between power struggle and emerging connection mirrors real-world experiences within queer communities, where age differences, social positioning, and perceived dominance can interact with attraction, admiration, and emotional vulnerability in ways that require careful negotiation, reflection, and ethical engagement. And by framing Tara and Siri's dynamic as both conflictual and tender, the narrative emphasizes that queer women's experiences of desire often involve navigating tensions between assertiveness, curiosity, restraint, and mutual consent, highlighting that relational growth frequently occurs within the space of negotiation rather than through unilateral expression or immediate gratification. And the emotional arc of Siri and Tara thus foregrounds interiority, self-recognition, and relational attunement, allowing audiences to appreciate how identity, desire, and ethical responsibility intersect in the formation of meaningful connections. And this emphasis on psychological and emotional complexity aligns with broader themes in the film regarding women's interior lives, the cultivation of trust, and the delicate balancing of relational ambition and personal integrity, while also offering commentary on how young women are socialized to monitor, manage, and often suppress expressions of emotional or romantic interest in one another, in order to remain socially legible, professionally safe, or morally defensible. And the film's exploration of their interactions demonstrates that emotional risk, curiosity, and vulnerability can coexist with attentiveness to boundaries, mutual respect, and ethical consideration, highlighting that intimacy is as much an ethical practice as it is an emotional or relational state. And by presenting the development of Siri and Tara's connection in a manner that emphasizes psychological realism, relational negotiation, and subtle acknowledgement of desire, the film resists conventional portrayals of lesbian attraction as either sensationalized or exoticized, instead offering a model for understanding queer relationality as a process of careful attention, mutual recognition, and ethical responsiveness, and the emotional resonance of their connection is amplified by the broader social and familial contexts that both characters inhabit, underscoring the ways in which external expectations, surveillance, and social scrutiny shape the manner in which queer women express and experience attraction, admiration, and relational longing. And the film thus situates desire as inseparable from context, relational history, and the continuous negotiation of selfhood, responsibility, and relational ethics, providing a narrative space in which queer women can see reflected their own experiences of navigating internal and external pressures while cultivating meaningful connections. And the oscillation between rivalry, miscommunication, and emergent connection between Siri and Tara mirrors the broader patterns of emotional labor and relational awareness that queer women often engage in, where interpersonal dynamics are rarely Straightforward, and expressions of admiration, tension, or longing are mediated by concern for mutual well-being, social safety, and self-respect. And through these dynamics, the film offers a nuanced portrayal of the ethical and emotional intelligence required to negotiate desire in a socially constrained environment, reinforcing that intimacy, attraction, and relational growth are processes that involve reflection, consent, and responsiveness, rather than unilateral expression or unchecked pursuit. And the scene also explores the symbolic dimensions of power and relational visibility, illustrating how competition, social positioning, and individual assertiveness intersect with emotional vulnerability and relational curiosity, thereby highlighting that queer women's negotiations of desire often encompass multiple layers of meaning, including ethical, social, and emotional considerations, and the careful attention to dialogue, hesitation, and mutual observation models a form of relation literacy that is central to understanding how queer women navigate complex interpersonal landscapes while maintaining respect, authenticity, and ethical self-awareness, and the film further demonstrates that relational intimacy can emerge from tension and apparent opposition when both parties are attentive to each other's interiority, responsive to cues of comfort and uncertainty, and willing to acknowledge shared vulnerabilities and emotional resonance, reinforcing the central theme that queer emotional life is defined by a combination of ethical attentiveness, interior reflection, and responsive engagement rather than performative spectacle or social sensationalism. And by framing the story in this way, the film validates the lived experiences of lesbian and queer women, emphasizing that ethical engagement, reflection, and the negotiation of mutual recognition are central to the development of meaningful intimacy, and that desire is as much about understanding, empathy, and shared attention as it is about affective or romantic expression. And the narrative thus situates Siri and Tara's connection within a broader discourse about women's interior lives, relational labor, and the cultivation of authentic intimacy, highlighting that both queer and non-queer women can relate to the emotional negotiations, hesitation, and reflective practices depicted, and that these dynamics resonate with the universal human search for connection, recognition, and relational truth, while also specifically affirming the unique experiences of queer women in navigating desire, social constraint, and ethical relational engagement. And the scene's portrayal of tentative acknowledgement, relational attention, and emerging mutual recognition underscores the film's broader thematic investment in depicting women's emotional lives as complex, ethically engaged, and socially meaningful, emphasizing that intimacy is a practice that integrates self-reflection, relational responsibility, and the attentive cultivation of shared understanding. And through Siri and Tara, the film foregrounds how young queer women navigate boundaries, curiosity, and ethical awareness in the pursuit of authentic connection, ultimately providing a rich, emotionally grounded, and ethically attentive portrayal of lesbian relational life that prioritizes interiority, mutual recognition, and the careful negotiation of desire within socially and relationally structured contexts, offering a narrative model in which queer women's experiences of emotional complexity, relational ethics, and emergent intimacy are rendered visible, legible, and worthy of reflection, and the careful calibration of tension, admiration, and tentative desire between Siri and Tara positions the scene as a meditation on how queer women come to understand themselves, their emotional responses, and their relational capacities, while negotiating the broader social pressures, ethical responsibilities, and interpersonal complexities that shape their interactions, thereby affirming the significance of women-centered, emotionally nuanced, and ethically attentive storytelling in representing lesbian and queer experiences with respect, seriousness, and authenticity. And the scene contributes to the film's overarching project of exploring how women come to recognize each other, themselves, and their relational potential in ways that honor restraint, interiority, and the quiet labor of mutual recognition, framing desire and emotional intimacy as processes of ethical engagement, mutual care, and thoughtful reflection, and not as spectacles or simplified narratives of romantic conquest, ultimately reinforcing the film's commitment to portraying queer women's interior and relational lives as fully complex, emotionally rich, and culturally significant, and situating these experiences within a broader discussion of women's emotional labor, social expectation, and the ongoing negotiation of authenticity, recognition, and relational visibility in a world that often struggles to validate or respectfully represent women loving women.